Good morning. We continue our review of the conclusion of Hemshech Ayin Beis, going through the essay that I wrote, and we are on page 22. The essay is posted on the WhatsApp, Ayin Beis WhatsApp group. And we are middle of the Mitteler Rebbe's take after reviewing the Alter Rebbe on the relationship between the Neshama, Mitzvah, and Torah. Especially the relationship between the Neshama and Torah, the Mitteler Rebbe elaborates on it. And that's what we're in the middle of learning. So we're on page, as I said, 22. So what did we learn yesterday? We began, the Mitteler Rebbe summed it all up, the three elements of the wick, the oil, which is the intelligence, the wick is the divine soul, the oil is the intelligence of the animal soul, turning into fuel that ultimately becomes Torah not just regular but Torah and even more than that, the Maor itself, because like the mile of a Baal Tshuva, goes even higher than the initial level of tzaddikim or the initial level of Torah as it is on its own, and is dependent, as he said, on the human being. The Adam is Yeshiv, and the person who immerses himself and learns Torah, and through that learning, he is Mamshich Ein Sof, like he said, all the way from the Maor in the Torah itself. And he said in the parentheses, he began at the bottom of 21, page 21, Ata Torah Neri, you, Hashem, will illuminate and radiate my candle. That's the Eir of Torah, Shemeir B'Meir Ein Sof. So the neshama gets enriched and illuminated by the Torah, and the neshama in turn also is mamshech into Torah. And then the pasuk continues, Hashem Yegiya Chashchi. Now you may look at the pasuk, you'll see, I think it was posted that in this pasuk it doesn't say Vav veHashem, but there's another pasuk that does say veHashem. So he explains the Vav is Meisif, the transformation of darkness to light, that's even stronger. The Maor itself even higher than the Eir. As he says on top, and we stopped at the end of the two lines on top of page 22. The mile of the Baal Tshuva over the tzaddik, like the B'tereh Shabbat. Now, so let's continue from there. So the next paragraph, actually, I was considering not to include in the essay, but then because of its chiddush, it's really powerful new idea that I have not seen elsewhere in Chassidus, I decided to include it and emphasize that point. So the Mitteler Rebbe now goes, you could say, I don't know, we're going to call it a tangent, but he goes off a bit, digresses a bit in understanding this Maila, the being Bamshech the Maor, which is even higher than the Eir. So I'm going to read paragraph 2 on page 22. As I said, this essay is posted on Ayin Beis WhatsApp group. So I write like this. This is me writing in a bracket. Kedai lahadgish. It's worthwhile emphasizing that the following paragraph, Sheketa haba, yesh bechidush madim, has a amazing chidush. The pirush in the explanation of the pasuk Ani Hashem leishanisi, ba'atem bnei Yisrael leichalisam. So this pasuk has been quoted quite a few times earlier when we spoke about the immutability of Elokus, of godliness. That is leishanisi, atahu mishanivraelim, atahu kedim shanivraelim, atahu mishanivraelim. That even though there's a tzimtzum and everything, from God's point of view, there's no change at all. And Torah actually captures that on Yashem Leishanisi, the immutability. The Eir Hakav goes through change. That the Eir before the tzimtzum is a expansive, seamless, divine consciousness, bligvul, and the tzimtzum then afterwards comes a Kav, which we Kav Hamida, a measurable Eir gvul. But the Eir Torah goes through on Yashem Leishanisi. The second half of the pasuk says, Ubnei Yisrael lo yishchalisam. Atam, and you, the children of Israel, will never be eliminated. It's a very powerful pasuk, basically saying, just as God is immutable, so too the Jewish people will never become extinct. There's a Peferish pasuk that says this. So the next paragraph has this chiddush madim, what I'm calling a tremendous chiddush. I have to date not found elsewhere chsidus this explanation. And I wrote v'ulei keirei hagilyon, those that are reading this publication, yuchel la'ayin o la'atzia bir be'emek hadvarim, can perhaps look into this and suggest an explanation, the depth of these ideas. So far, nobody has taken me up on this offer, but I did write it, and it's here. So we're going to read now this paragraph, which is another parenthesis within the parentheses that we'll read. And as I said, because it's quite profound, I myself have not really fully wrapped my head around it. But maybe now, when we learn it together, we can make some more heads or tails. And obviously, it's all connected to the topic. It's not complete tangent, but you could hypothetically understand the Mitteler Rebbe's discussion about Torah and the learning of Torah and Amshach of Eir and Sof in Torah, etc., even without this parentheses. But let's read it together and let's see what we can derive from it. So here goes. We're now third paragraph, page 22. Even if you don't have the pages, I will read it all and explain it all. So v'zehu, what's zehu? We're just speaking about how of Torah, through a person learning Torah, is mamshich even a higher level than the Eir itself, because you're transforming darkness to light. So it's kavoy yeser from b'chinas Maor the Ein Sof Atzmei shelamayla b'chinas Eir. So he says like this, and this is the meaning of the pasuk Ani Hashem le'shanisi. Again, I, God, am immutable, do not change. Everything in existence is subject to change, of course. God is not. And you, the children of Israel, from the word kiloyin, will never become extinct. In this case, it means literally not disappear.
I think it's Bnei Yaakov. I just posted the pasuk for Malachi.
If it says Yaakov, it says Yaakov. It could be.
Okay.
It could be. For some reason, I recall Yisrael. Maybe in some places, if that's what it says, that's what it says. I'm not going to argue with a pasuk. Good. So the Mitteler Rebbe says like this: Shehu kematmiya. The pasuk is actually saying this like in the context of wonder, a wonder. Matmiya from the word tmiya, wonder, amazement. Imani havaya. If I, God, that's ani havaya leishanisi. Shubchinis moyer lamayla ma'oyer the shem havaya shebetei mitzvos leishanisi klal. If havaya, which is the level of moyer that's higher than the oyer of shem havaya and Torah mitzvos, like he said before. Torah mitzvahs, of course, is Torah Eir. But when you learn Torah and you bring Torah into this world through Torah Sheba'al Peh, that discusses and probes every detail, and it's a guide that helps us transform this world, the darkness, into light, like the Aveda of transforming the animal soul to become V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. So that adds a higher level. So he's saying like this. So it's the level of Moed that's higher than Eir of Shem Havaya. And we're saying Leishanisi Klal, that it's not subject to any change. The Masha'er de Teir Meir, Gam B'cheshach Ha'elyon, that which Torah radiates, also in the Cheshach Ha'elyon, like we learned earlier, Torah, remember, also radiates Cheshach, the Tzimtzum. Torah is not subject to the Tzimtzum. But that's the Cheshach Ha'elyon. That's not the Cheshach HaTachton. That's not the crass, what he called the Cheshach Gas of Klippas Nega, in this dark world. That's God's power of concealment that doesn't affect the Torah. The Torah is not subject to that filter called the Tzimtzum. And like he said, that's not a Chiddush. Why is that not a Chiddush? Because Torah is not affected by it. The Chiddush is to go into a dark world that defies God, Tachtenim, that goes against God's will, or possibly can go against and transform. That's the Aveda, what he explained earlier, Torah Sheba'al Peh, and ultimately neshama is down below that achieve that. So he says like the Masha Erdheide Meir Gam B'Chish Chel Zeu Kamei B'Chinas Shinui V'Dover Mechudash Mina Atzmi is the Ein Sof. That is an element of Shinui, and like something new from Atzmis of Ein Sof, Kamei Shekosov Yehi Oyer L'Hoyer Acheshach. So here he's saying there is something that's innovative, something unique about it, that so when Torah radiates, even in the darkness, meaning even through the tzimtzum, that's a chiddush, because before that there's a tzimtzum, and Torah is defying the tzimtzum. It's not being affected by it. Because so right there's a shinui. There's a shinui between before the darkness was illuminated and after the darkness is illuminated. Let's continue to read and see where he's going here. As I said, this is not a simple piece. But I'm reading right now the pshat. I will try to understand the deeper meaning behind it. Aval b'mehus v'atzmus ein sof shenikra moir. This is when you're talking about oir. So when oir is shining, like let's talk about the beginning of creation, for example. The beginning it says God created the world. Then it says the world was enveloped, was engulfed, was completely submerged in darkness. Then comes the third pasuk, that even though it's dark, now God is shining a light in that darkness. That's a shinui. The shinui that before he shined the light, it was dark, and now he's shining a light. That's on the level of oir. So the oir, before the light shined, it was dark, and now it's shining. But in the atzmis ein sof of moir, the source of light, shenikra moir hari kamech chashech ke'eda. Their darkness and light don't. The whole concept that those terms don't even apply, because by atzmis you can't say he's dark, you can't say he's light. Darkness and light are subject to something that is created that has a definition called light. So the opposite of light is darkness. So either it's a dark state or it's a light state. There can be a shinui from one state to the other. But when you're talking about atzmus, mahus atzmus ein sof, darkness is like light, bli shinui klal, without any change. So when we say ani avaya leishanisi, clearly he's saying we're talking about the moir, not the oir. Let me just go back and make sure. Okay, good. So the oir is subject to shinui, the moir is not subject to shinui. That's what he said so far. Okay? But he still has to continue what the matmiyah, what's the wonder here? So he says like this. And that's why, from point of view of atzmus, darkness does not darken anything at all, unequivocally, not at all. And from that perspective, you don't need to be mamshech oir. Where do you need light? Where it's dark. A state that is not subject to darkness, which you can't conceal, you don't need to illuminate, because it's beyond concealment and beyond illumination, and therefore you don't need ein sorech. You don't need oir to dispel and to remove the darkness, as you do in a world where oir and cheshech are interacting with each other. So that's the cheshech elyon. Now he says, and that's why also the cheshech of klipas nega, meaning the cheshech in this world, is also not cheshech at all from God's perspective. From our perspective, it's quite dark. But from God's perspective, and from that perspective, you don't need the air of Torah. Because if Atzmus is not subject to darkness, so from Atzmus' point of view, Atzmus is in this world, just as he is, so to speak, in his own domain. So the brackets is another manuscript, so he adds, or you also don't need the light of the neshama to radiate this world. In other words, everything we do to illuminate this world is from the point of view of our perspective where there is darkness, but not from Ashmos perspective. The Zeu Shematmiya, the Mitteler Rebbe K'nyan. This is the wonder. And this is what the Pasuk is wondering. Va'atem b'nei Yaakov, you say it says b'nei Yaakov, Va'atem b'nei Yaakov loichalisam, b'mesiris nefesh de nefesh abamis, b'shnei yitzrecha lafich gam cheshach le'er. This is the line that I find the most difficult to understand. So what he's saying here is like this. Remember, the nefesh, the Aveda Lamata is the transformation of the darkness of the animal soul and the klippas nega of this world to light, to v'haftas Hashem Elokecha. He just said, Ani Hashem le'shanisi, from God's point of view, well, that's not necessary because the Maor is not subject to darkness. So he's saying, this is what the Pasuk is wondering, that when you say the Yidden, Bnei Yaakov, don't dissipate, or cannot be extinguished, can never disappear. So he says through the Mesiris Nefesh of the Nefesh Abamis, when the Nefesh Abamis is transformed to V'haftas Hashem Elokecha, b'shnei yitzrecha lafich gam cheshach le'er, to transform darkness to light, ve'ein tzorich le'ze'er de Nefesh Elokis ve'er de Torah k'hai gavna, ela mamela lo yuster. So what he seems to be saying is, just as Ani Hashem le'shanisi, Atzmus, meaning, is higher than darkness and light, so too the animal soul, when it's transformed, it is also that state. B'nei Yaakov le'chalisam, because they fundamentally can access Atzmus that is not subject to darkness, and therefore doesn't need the aid of. So he's wondering, does it mean that it doesn't need the aid of Torah or the aid of the Nefesh Elokis, the aid of the Nefesh Elokis, Elam Mamela la Yuster, and automatically it's not concealed because once you're reaching the Maor is not subject to concealment. So it's not clear to me what is the Mitteler Rebbe coming to say.
That's what he's saying.
He's trying to say, let me just finish what I have to say. The Mitteler Rebbe, is he coming to say that can be a consideration and the Pasuk is saying that's not the case? Or he's saying that is the case, like we learned earlier. Because the Nefesh Abamis is rooted higher than Nefesh Elokis in Toyu, and once you transform it, you're reaching a level of Maor that's higher than Oir. So maybe that's what the Pasuk is saying. Ani Hashem, just like Ani Hashem le'shanisi, then Bnei Yaakov le'chalisam, that they also don't disappear because in the Mesiris Nefesh, because they're reaching that level of Maor. But then what's the meaning of the word matmiya? What's the wonder here? Is he wondering it as a positive, as a question mark, or as a conclusion? So that's not clear to me. So let me stop here a moment because there's another parenthesis now within this parenthesis as well, which gives another explanation. So this is, I just read what he writes, like I wrote in my introduction. It's not clear to me exactly the meaning of all of this. So, but I still felt to include it because it seems to me there's something here that's a lot deeper that needs to be developed. Go ahead. Anybody wants to comment or question? Feel free to comment. If you feel you have an explanation, by all means.
If this is the correct way, why do you need the Torah or the Neshama? He's saying that.
That's
But
why he's saying
I don't-
matmiya. I think that's why he's saying, he's wondering, and that's not the conclusion. Exactly right, what you just said. Or you could say that in the beginning you need the Neshama and the Torah, but once the Nefesh Abamis has been transformed, you don't need it anymore. Maybe that's what he means. I'm not positive. I really don't know. I'm not sure what the meaning of this is.
He's saying that in the Atzmus oil is kachashecho koero, gam choshech lo yachshech klal uchlal.
I know, I just read it. I understand exactly what. From Atzma's point of view, I don't have a question. The question is, what's the dimyan between Ani Hashem le'shanisi or Bnei Yaakov le'chalisam? How is he carrying it over? And what does the matmiya mean? Now, I did look up in the commentaries, and if I recall correctly, how they read the pasuk, simple pshat. What does the pasuk mean? So the most simple interpretation is just like God is immutable, Ubnei Yaakov leichalisam.
Right.
So too the Jews will always be here. They also won't be subject to change, meaning God forbid to be eliminated in any other way. But there is a commentary, if I recall, maybe that Radak, I have to look it up again. I didn't look at it now, I looked at it a while back. I think there's a commentary that comes and says that the pasuk is actually wondering, the Novi is wondering. Ani Hashem le'shanisi, but Bnei Yisrael lo'chalisam. You could say on Hashem le'shanisi, but on Bnei Yaakov, can you say it also? That's what I think is maybe the pshat, and then that's the matmiyah here. But I have to look it up again. To be honest, I looked it up when I first wrote this. But I'm just again reading what he's saying here. I can't.
You have to look at it again because he wants to compare Bnei Yisrael to Ani Hashem.
But he keeps saying matmiyah. He says it twice. Shukamatmi im ani Hashem shubchinis moel lamel me'er le'shenizika.
I'm sorry. Can you frame the dilemma? Is the issue that if there's no need to illuminate the darkness if in fact the higher level of kedusha.
That's exactly what he's saying. Yes.
Yeah. I want to ask a question, like a good yid, trying to answer a question with a question.
Okay, so
yeah.
Well, just remember
I
that
think this is the masmiyah. This is the masmiyah. What do you need the oil haTorah?
What I was
Ani Hashem lo yishonisi, ve'at bnei Yisrael lo yichilisem. So what do you need the oil haTorah?
I just wanted.
And what's the answer?
I don't know. Maybe next psukim.
I just wanted to suggest a possibility. I don't know, but this is pre Chet Ha'etz, right, in the creation, and maybe he's talking about La'asi Lavo when the neshama is essentially radiating in Elikus, something like the way the Eibishter radiates Elikus. In which case,
I suggested that already.
Oh, did
you?
I
said that. Oh. Yeah. I said that in the beginning, the Nefesh Habamis needs the light of the neshama and the light of Torah. But it could be afterwards, once it's transformed, so then it's like the body will then nurture the soul.
Yeah.
So I said that before.
Well, I think
maybe that's what he's referring to. I don't know if that's the pshat, because he doesn't at all. He doesn't hint to it at all.
Well, but isn't it the case just like foundational Chassidus or
no, that something like that would need to be said.
No. I haven't said.
You can't just assume that's the pshat here.
Well, what I was going to say is that, as I understand it, in Yemos Mashiach,
there's a whole Ayin Beis talks about. That's what the Ayin Beis talks about at length. This is not a new concept. It says in Chassidus that neshama nizunas min aguf. That after the whole idea with the eyesight, if you recall, in the beginning the neshama needs Torah to illuminate it, like an eye needs an outside light. But then the eye itself will see, and then the neshama will be mashpia into Torah. The same idea, the body initially needs the neshama to illuminate it, and then the body will feed the neshama. This is explained in Chassidus. But that he does but a thing like that would seem to need to be mentioned here, even at least hinted to. Since he doesn't, I'm still not clear. I cannot say definitively that's what he means. It's possible. Mm-hmm. That's why I suggested it before.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Yeah. Okay.
It looks like the matmiyah is like we said just now, that why do you need the oil hanshama?
It's possible. Yes, I agree. I'm not disagreeing that that's possible. Or the matmiyah, the pasuk is where? Samalache, the pasuk?
Yes. It's Malachi Gimel Vav.
Okay, 1 second.
I posted it.
Yeah, I just want to see the commentary.
Yeah.
Since we're already on it, I remember researching it to try to understand what the matmiyah is. I didn't end up with anything that was very fully satisfying. But let me see again now we're on it again. I'll look into it again. I want to look into it again. Definitely a very heavy piece, that's for sure.
It's very beautiful.
Just a second.
He's emphasizing that in the Maor, it's above all of this.
Yeah, that's correct. By the way, interesting, the Targum says Bnei Yisrael. I remember I saw that.
That is
So
interesting.
the pasuk says Bnei Yaakov, because Yaakov and Yisrael are interchangeable. But the Targum does say Va'asun Bnei Yisrael. Okay.
It makes sense, Bnei Yaakov, because he wants to talk about the Nefesh Habahamis.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay. I don't find anything. I'll do more research. I don't see anything in the commentaries. I think I saw something. Maybe it's Samach Tzedek. I need to look it up. Anyway, so as the plot thickens further, there's another parenthesis here. It goes like this. Oy Efsher, the Mitteler Rebbe, is really stretching our minds here. Oy Efsher, you can, or possibly you can say, Mitteler Rebbe is writing, the Mitam Zed Ani Havaya Leishanisi, that for this very reason, that Ani Havaya does not change, is immutable, Hainu, Mashakosev Havaya Yegia Choshchi. That's what it says. Hashem radiates, pierces the darkness. Shagam acheshech yoyer ka'oyer, that the darkness too will shine like light. Ulezeh atam bnei Yisrael, and therefore, or for this reason, bnei Yaakov. For this reason, bnei Yaakov shein anashamis leika lisham bekrishme. So now he's not talking about the nefesh habamis. He's giving a different interpretation that Atam B'nai Yaakov is referring to neshamas, that they will not expire in Shema. Because you could say, when a person is saying Shema and Hashem Echad, you would think the Klois HaNefesh, it would cause a person to completely lose their identity, completely be absorbed in the source. So he's saying that's not the case. That the neshama is loichlisa b'krishma, which is another interesting twist here. So maybe, see, this seems to be a very different interpretation altogether. Because now he's talking about do the neshamas lose themselves as they are consumed with Krishma? And the answer is loy. They're not loy chalisom. That's what he adds in this parentheses. Ad kan l'shene, and then both parentheses end. Ad kan l'shene. So, as I said, I wrote it down for the record, and did ask all the readers, including all of you. You want to figure it out? Try to figure it out. I couldn't fully figure it out yet, but we'll still work on it. I got to study it a few more times, perhaps. Wait, good. Anybody wants to comment further? We can just move on.
I don't know. To me, I mean, it is fascinating, and it's not perfect. It's not clear, but to me, the general theme that jumps through here is about the eternal nature of Neshamas Yisrael, and that in
That's the pasuk.
essence,
That's what the pasuk says.
yeah.
And we're asking what the Mitteler Rebbe is adding. The pasuk says that literally, that just as Hashem is immutable, Bnei Yaakov lecholisam. That's the meaning. That's the simple meaning of the pasuk.
Oh, I understand, but
what the Mitteler Rebbe is coming to say here.
I'm talking at the level of light and how shall I say, birur.
We're going back to what you said earlier, or you're adding something additional now?
No, really, just returning to what I said, basically.
Okay, so I already suggested that. I said it's possible that he may mean that. It's still not clear because there's still other things that need to be clarified, like why is the Mitteler Rebbe even coming to tell us this? And but interesting. It's definitely worthwhile looking into.
In this level of Atzmus, that there is no darkness at all, how would you explain Gimel Klippus Atmeis? He said Klippus Neugan does not make a difference. You don't need oil HaTorah.
So Chassidus says Gimel Klippus Atmeis is heder. It's a metzius of heder. It doesn't exist from that perspective. It only exists because we give it substance. But it's essentially Klippus Atmeis would never have existed if we did not do something. In other words, it's the ultimate helam as a result of a chet, or there are things that were created shalosh klippus atmeis, like he says in Tanya, that are ein behem tev klal. But as long as you don't use it, like for example, let's say chazer, if you don't eat it and you don't use it in any way that's osur, so it remains, you're mavared it by leisa, by not doing it. So it also is megala lakuz by not acting on it. So it's not, but there's no thing as ra or cheshech altogether from Atzma's point of view. However, keep in mind that God did create a world, and it's a real world. It's not a dimyon. And the world, there is concealment and darkness, and ultimately klippus nega and shalosh klippus atmeis. And that's the aveda that we need to do, is to bring a lakuz there. Listen, he wants to be megala. Let me put it this way. In a world of darkness, God wants us to bring light, but then bring the level of asmos that's beyond light and darkness. All that is an aveda that we need to do. So ultimately, the goal is to bring also the Maor that's higher than light and darkness. But the first step is to illuminate the world, even the dark world. And when we do that, we reach the level of Maor. That's what he's been discussing in the previous paragraph. We reach that level of Maor that's higher than the level of Oyer.
So maybe you need the oil of Torah not in this level, but in a level a little lower, because this is the Ova Tachtenim. In this level, why do you need the Ova Tachtenim?
Well, that's what we were just discussing, myself and Yitzchok, that initially the Nefesh Abamis and the Guf and this world does need the Torah Oyer, because you can't just access the Maor on your own. You have to first access Torah Oyer. And through that, you can elevate to the level of Maor that's higher than darkness and light. Because once it's transformed, once the Nefesh Abamis senses the source, that it's all Elokus, through the Izbonnus of the Yichud Ilah, Yichud Tata, Yichud Ilah, and the two Yichudim, then it itself is loy chalisam, and then would not need air of Torah or the air of the neshama. That's what we were discussing. That's
So
the
that's
possible meaning here.
explanation.
It's very possible that is the meaning here. I
This is the
absolutely feel.
explanation. The Mitteler Rebbe is saying about
Yeah, that's what we're
Matmea
discussing.
in a
So it's
higher
very.
level.
That is what we're thinking. Yeah, that's what we're considering. Correct. It just would be a little geschmacker if the Mitteler Rebbe himself says something like that. You know,
Maybe it's because it comes after a fairly long discussion about about the light of Torah being like lo shanisi, like it as it is as it's mamshich, as it's drawn down into the worlds, it doesn't change its nature. So once we understand that, then the Mitteler Rebbe is saying, now that you understand this concept, it happens to be the case. It's true for Neshamas Yisrael too, in their essential nature, not as they are in post Chet Eitz Hadas, but in their fundamental nature.
I would use post Simpson here, not Chet Eitz Hadas. He never mentions that.
Okay, all right, well, fine. Post Simpson, better said. But in its pre-Tzimtzum origins and its fundamental nature, it has that level of lo shanisi, just like the or of Torah. And so, since we understand that concept, now we can say it's a little bit of a chizuk, like encouragement, like uh, don't forget, you have to do this work, but don't forget where from whence you come. That if you do this work, you have such a illuminating power that it's inherent in your very nature as a neshama. And so don't underestimate the power of the neshama when you do this avoda. That you have this kind of this brilliance. I don't mean to be punny, but this kind of illuminating brilliance that is a Maor. It's not it's not just or, it's a Maor.
But you said just now, maybe that's what it means in Tonot Ve'Eliyahu, who is coming before, the Yisrael or Torah? The conclusion is that Yisrael. So this is in the level of Maor. Yisrael, including the Nefesh Bahamis, is above everything. It's Atmos. But later, when you're coming down, then you need Takeder Torah. Even when you're
Exactly.
coming.
Exactly.
Okay. As I said, it's very likely that this is pshat, and it stems with what we've learned in Ayin Beis as well. Yeah. So let's continue. Now the next paragraph. So now that once the Mitteler Rebbe has established this, he now says, what I'm still wondering is, I will discuss later in the essay the Helam Atzmi, how that fits into all of this. Because ultimately, the transformation of the darkness of the Kalim and even of the animal soul ultimately leads us back to a place that's higher than Oir altogether, which is the Helam Atzmi. But here, Maor is even higher than Helam Atzmi could be, because it's higher than Helam and Gilui. We talked about this a bit more. I'm sure we'll talk about this later more, so just mentioning it.
Okay. It's also a little hard to say what we said just now, because the Mitteler Rebbe is saying here that even the Nefesh Bahamis, through the Mesiras Nefesh Bahamis of Klipas Noiga, in the level of Atmos, doesn't need anything. Our explanation is all Kodmo is about the Nefesh of the Kis, the Neshama, not the Nefesh of Bahamis.
It's just we're comparing it because just like the neshama, once Torah illuminates the neshama rises and is mashpia and Torah. So similarly, we say about the guf and nefesh habamis that the chatchila they are being refined by the soul and being fed nizunis from the neshama. But then neshama nizunis min
Okay.
haguf.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we could say that in this level from Atzmos is the dira b'tachtenim. Even on this level that gam choshech lo yachshech memeko, but he wanted there to be the neshama and the guf.
Yeah. So bottom line is we want the etzem begilui. The etzem you find more in tachtenim and in mitzvahs and in the choshech. Gilui you find more in Torah and you want to have the ner, but then you want to have the atzmi of Torah, and then you go elevate even higher than the of Torah to the Maor, the source of it all. Yeah. So let's continue. Al pizeh mavayir admuram tzoi. Following the above, according to this, he explains, the Mitteler Rebbe continues to explain in a beautiful way. Again, he's developing and unpacking what the Alter Rebbe says briefly. The Seder, Hemshech HaSeder B'Krishma. So we've already been discussing how Shema comes after Birchas Yetzer with the Malachim. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Baruch Shem Kved Malchusei L'Olam Vad. Yichud Eloh, Yichud Tata, and the Yichud of both Yichudim. That leads to V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha B'chol Avavcha B'shnei Yitzarecha. That leads to B'chol Nafshecha. And finally, B'chol Moedecha B'li Gvul. So now he's going to explain how the continuation of Shema, or V'ahavta, I should say specifically, all follows this order, because now you're taking the Yichud Elyon that the Neshama has achieved with the help of the Ner Mitzvah of this Talis and Tefillin we put on before we said Shema. And ultimately, it's leading to Torah to an that's even higher than the of the Ner, of the Psila, of the wick. Like we discussed, even to the level of Maor. We've transformed now, we've also gone and worked on transforming the animal soul to loving God. So the Mitteler Rebbe now goes on and says, and the rest of the V'ahavta is all in a progressive order. And here's how he breaks it down. I number it to make it a little easier to see, and he spells it out. 1, V'ahavta b'chol levavcha. After Shema comes loving with all your heart, with both sides of the heart, Yetzer Tev, Yetzer Hara. 2, maybe that brings him lias keli l'teira er. That brings him to become the level of teira er. And where do we see that? In the v'haya hadvarim ha'ela. What's hadvarim? Haya hadvarim ha'ela. Asher nechem mitzavcha hayom. That is teira. Divrei teira. 3, v'shinantam. V'dibarta bam teira shebal peh. So we have teira shebiksav, teira, and then teira shebal peh. You shall teach and speak it. That's teira shebal peh, says the Mitteler Rebbe. 4, hamshachas ha-teira b'mokim shafel. That the teira is now nimshach, is transmitted even in a lowly place, in the lowest of worlds. B'shivtecha b'veisecha b'lechtecha b'derech. Where you're sitting at home and you're traveling. That's bringing teira b'shivtecha when you're in a state of, in your home. And b'lechtecha b'derech, you bring it down to a lower level. Number 5, gam b'cheshech halayla, even more so in the darkness of night, b'shichvecha, when you lie down. B'shivtecha b'secha is you're sitting at home, you're awake, and you're traveling. But then comes b'shichvecha, when you go to sleep. Number 6, then comes ukshartem la'ois uksaftem, mitzvah of tefillin, you bind the sign, v'chsaftem al mezuzas, and you write it down in mezuzas. Yirida sa'er de teira gamba maisa de ner mitzvah. So you're ultimately bringing it down in mitzvahs, in kshartem and ksaftem are mitzvahs. The maisa of ner mitzvah, bedvorim gashmim de datzcham, physical items that are made up of mineral, vegetation, animal, human, like the cloth, the parchment of tefillin and mezuzahs, which is v'kshartem v'chsaftem al mezuzahs b'secha v'sherecha. So you see here that it's a progressive order. Once you come to the yichud, now you're bringing the yichud of Hashem Echad through all these stages. Animal soul, b'chol avavcha. You're reaching now the level to Torah, transforming the animal soul's intelligence to divine intelligence of Torah. V'hayadvarim, Torah shabapeh, b'shivtecha b'secha. Also at night, b'shachbecha, and down into the maisim gashmim, the maisim dvarim gashmim of mitzvahs. 6 steps he spelled out here. And now he's going to, that's just a summation. The next paragraph, we're actually going to read the language of the Mitteler Rebbe as he explains this progressive order. Any questions? So the next few paragraphs, all the way to the top of page 23, is all going to be now a little elaboration on these 6 steps. So I think it's a good place to stop here before we get into all the details. Does anyone have any questions? So you come away with a whole deeper understanding of Shema and all its details. Quite amazing. We say it every day, so many times a day, but you don't always know what each piece adds. Here you have a whole contemplation, a whole journey, actually, of how we bring Achdus Hashem into our lives. So, of course, is the whole theme of Torah Chassidus, especially Ayin Beis. I could read a little more, one paragraph maybe. I just don't want to leave anything hanging. No comments? Nothing? No.
It's all a work in process.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay, I'll just say this. We'll continue reading it tomorrow inside. But after he explains how this works with the Shema through all these different, like I said, progression of transforming our lives, we're going to go back and see how this helps us understand Ayin Beis, which all this is obviously coming to help us understand the Hemshech Ayin Beis. And with that, we're going to finish chapter 4 of this essay. There are 3 more chapters. There'll be chapter 5, where we're going to talk about Riyah, HaRiyah, the big theme, sight, vision, eyesight. Then will be chapter 6, will be a long discussion of what each of these 3 things, the mile of neshama over Torah, the mile of Torah over the neshama and mitzvahs, the mile of Torah of neshama over Torah mitzvahs, the mile of Torah over mitzvahs, the mile of mitzvahs over Torah, a deeper breakdown of all these different relationships. And finally, chapter 7 will be the conclusion, where we bring it all together, mamat lamayil, mamayil lamata, and the joining of both, to understand the beginning of the Hemshech Keser, where the Mitteler Rebbe, the Rebbe Rasha began a whole bunch of questions at the beginning of the Hemshech, to suggest an answer to those questions which we also don't have an answer to. And then some final notes about the Ayin Beis and Hamagbihi and so on. So we're getting there. We're on page 22. Like I said, this is a 47 or 48 page essay by now. I added a few things. So we're right now, just to give you the lay here, land, like halfway through page 22. 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 paragraphs we read and learned. So a little less than halfway through. And thank God. I hope everybody is appreciating this and getting it to some extent. And with that, I'm going to stop the recording. Again, any questions, any comments, any general comments on the whole thing? Okay. So I'm stopping here.
I appreciate you having written the essay and making everything so clear and focusing on the key central paragraphs in a very long Maor of the Mitteler Rebbe. I mean, I think you've kind of spoon-fed it well to us and the reader, so it makes it much more understandable, and the concepts are made very clear. So maybe that's why you're not getting so many questions or comments. I mean, except for the paragraph that we debated. It's all pretty clear. I mean,
okay, good. No, I'm glad to hear that. And also remember, almost everything we're reading here, we have discussed to some extent.
Yeah, maybe. Exactly.
Right. Because when I taught it, I was writing this as well. I mean, it's all informed by each other.
Right. And taught it twice.
No, I'm not complaining. I'm just want to make sure that everybody is, that we're covering all the bases here, that we're. The goal is that you should all become masters and be able to teach it to the world.
Yeah. The problem is practicing what we preach. I mean, I understand this intellectually, but in my avoda, like it's a completely different matter to apply it.
Yeah. Welcome to the club. Don't worry, you're not alone.
Yeah. That's my frustration.
Okay.
It's a personal one.
It's a legitimate frustration, and we all have it. But you know what? The more you learn it, the more you know, the more you becomes easier to apply because you're at least aware of what needs to be applied.
Yes.
I mean, you really learn to appreciate Chassidus. I mean, it's like in a way when you learn this, you realize that without this, how do you really know what Shema is even?
How do you know what you're supposed to do with yourself in your life?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone says Shema, has a lot of beautiful things in it, but here you really get it's a true transformational experience here. If you apply it, obviously, it's a real journey to a deeper state of consciousness that in turn transforms you.
I mean, what's beautiful about the elucidation is that within Shema, you essentially, I mean, if you really think about it, have the entire purpose of the human being and the relationship with the Eibishter. I mean, in just really just one. I mean, it's 2 psukim, but even just one. And of course, it's very deep. I mean, the meanings are very, you have to really understand it. But when we understand why is Shema such a central prayer, and you say, okay, well, Achdus Hashem is obviously very, very important, or the existence and the singularity and the preeminence of God, obviously critical concepts. But why is this so fundamental to what it means to be a Yid? And this Chassidus explains why. Essentially, the whole purpose is embedded within Shema of our existence and our relationship with God and our relationship with the world. I mean, it's all in there. I mean, it takes a lot of elucidation, but it is all in there.
Yeah, the words of in the words of the Maor, both in Ayin Beis as well as the Maor Hamagbihi, he says, "Shema is Yesod or Klolos Kol HaMitzvos." He says it very clearly that Shema encompasses what you just said, well, the whole Torah mitzvahs.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's been the most fascinating part. I mean, everything's fascinating, but understanding just why that is and how it is. I mean, it's like you can take all of Torah with you, all of your purpose. You can take the Shema, one pasuk, pocket it in your brain, and never forget why you're here.
Yeah.
Also, the Gra says that the Echad of the Shema is Gematria 13, is the 13 different ways that we learn the Torah. And that's actually the Yichud between the Elah and Tata is the Shema and then Baruch Shem, but the connection is Echad, which is essentially the entire Torah.
Okay, nice.
Very nice, George.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let me sign off here. Tomorrow we'll have a class. Friday we won't. Friday and Sunday, I'm out of town, going to the JLI Washington event. But tomorrow we will continue. Tomorrow's also Chafov, the 80, the 81st yard site? Yeah. Of the Rebbe's father. That's tomorrow. I don't know if any of you heard my program on Sunday, My Life. I spoke about Chafov, a very beautiful Torah from the Rebbe's father on mezuzah and its connection to a home and Shalom Bayis. Worthwhile listening to. It was a very nice, beautiful Torah that he said, that he explained that.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll post it.
Can you post it, please? Yeah, that'd be great.
I will, Bli Netter. I'll put it at the right timestamp too, because it's a long show, so I'll put it at the correct timestamp.
Right. Thank you. That's good. That would be
Sure.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, wonderful. Thanks for letting us know. Like, give me some material for a vort if I bring.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Great. So everyone have a great day. Enjoy. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.